make a difference and move on to something new ahead. Just you put one foot in front of the other, and you'll be doing just what Granny D has said. Whoa, whoa. If you want to get folks all together.
And I have to say that she has been an influence in that not only is she kind of a sort of spiritual leader for us all, a kind of muse, inspiration, but I think she also makes me feel, anyway, that our efforts really are very, very possible. And I believe that we can really accomplish something here, and it's largely due to that grand old lady.
I think she served as a reminder to me that fixing this entrenched and broken system is really about individual contact with other people and building a movement from below, and that it's not going to happen from above, and that means getting out and being with real people the way Granny D did, and organizing a mass movement to get money out of politics.
I guess I was kind of a regular high school kid when Granny D walked into my life, and she spoke at commencement about this issue of campaign finance reform and about walking across the country. She was over 90 years old, and that made a pretty big impression. And in the years after that, I had the opportunity to march with her a couple times, to speak with her many times, to watch her get arrested in the U.S. Capitol, fighting for campaign finance reform. And I figured if she, a little over 5 feet tall, over 90 years old, could take up this fight, I, in my 20s, certainly had to do my part.
I'll tell you about how I first heard about Granny D. It's Christmas of 1999, and I'm in the living room having a glass of wine before 20 people go into dinner in southwestern Connecticut, and I'm talking to the husband of my partner's niece. His name's Joe Haddock, and somehow we got onto the conversation of reforming our government, and he started to tell me about this crazy grandmother that he had this harebrained idea that she was going to walk across the whole country for campaign finance reform, and the family couldn't talk her out of it. And they had raised all kinds of objections. How are you going to do it? Walk 6 days a week, 10 miles a day. Can you do that? Prove it. So she went out and did it, 10 miles a day for a week. And off she went. Well, how are you going to sleep out? I'll just sleep out under the stars. Can you do that? Sure. She hoisted up her sleeping bag and a backpack and hiked 2 days, stayed overnight, and came back. And every time they would try and slow her down, she jumped over. So he said, okay, my job in New York City is building websites for big corporations. I'll build you a website, Granny. And it happened that we were talking 7 days before she began at the Rose Bowl on January 1st. So that's how I met Granny D.
When people ask me how I got involved with Granny D, campaign finance reform, what made me do anything, after reading her journal, which had been turned into a book with her and Dennis Burke working on it, I could never again say I was too old or it was too late to do something. And she has an incredible way of saying, listen, you either do something that you have a passion for, that you believe in, or if you don't, then those things that you think are harmful, it's just like you stepped over to their side.
One thing Granny D used to say is, she had this quote, "Democracy, it's not what you have, it's what you do." And she set an incredible example for how we do democracy, how we treat it as a verb, and get out and put even our lives on the line, as she did over the age of 90, walking and continuing the fight.
Something good walking down the road. She believed she could.
One thing Granny D recognized is this wasn't just democracy as an end in itself. This was people's lives that motivated her, and that ought to motivate us in this work.
Well, I met Granny D about 8 years ago when she gave, as a charity, a walk to anyone who wanted to bid on it, and our book group bid on it. This was after she'd walked across the country, and she was still giving to people freely, and that has inspired me, because I feel that giving, you get more than you take.
For a timely task, you know it must be done. Yes, it must be done. Well, you know you gotta.
And when she spoke, whether it was a written speech or even just off the cuff, she had a certain poise and posture and eloquence that made people sit up and not just listen, but really immediately connect with her in a kind of spiritual and soulful way. I don't think I've ever met anyone quite like her since then, but never anyone who really just could draw you in as quickly as Doris could draw you in, with her humanity and with her sense of purpose and just her love, basically. So what compels me most about Doris is that she was such a soulful and poetic person, in addition to being a brave person.
Even more important than campaign finance reform is the fact that she illustrates the power of one. And that old lady said, "You're never too old to raise a little hell."